Verstappen has taken the checkered flag to win the Japanese Grand Prix.
Max Verstappen, two-time world champion.
Woo! That's crazy. I mean, very mixed emotions, of course, you know, to win out twice.
What's up, everyone? It is Ricci here, bringing you season 2, episode 21 of the F1 Grand Prix. Today is October the 11th, and Max Verstappen is the world champion, back-to-back world champion. Yeah. Hi. Well, let's start. Hey, Andrew. Hi, Erica. How are you guys doing?
Good. Great.
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. We are filming this after the Canadian Thanksgiving weekend. So to our listeners in Canada, happy Thanksgiving, and I hope everyone was able to eat a lot of turkey and watch a lot of American football. And I think there was Canadian football. There was a couple of Jays games this weekend. We don't want to talk about that. So next subject, because that was quite depressing. I was able to go to New York, and New York was lovely. A lot of good pizza. But yeah, I think we can, we're filming this after the Japanese Grand Prix. And as I think it's what I just said earlier, Max Verstappen on a wet day in Japan was able to capture his second F1 championship, second year in a row, back to back. And, it was an interesting weekend. Japan, as Andrew and I talked about it in the previous episode, it is a difficult track. But man, Sunday was quite a mess on a whole lot of levels. And then, we had Charles Leclerc's screw up at the end of the race, which basically awarded Max's win. We had some interesting fights, but I'm just going to open up to everybody. And I know there was a lot of stuff that happened after the race. So tune in to a very good episode. But first, Andrew and Erica, thoughts of the Japanese Grand Prix?
It was good. I argue that they may need to do it at earlier times in the season, because the way they have it, the calendar right now is that it's during typhoon season.
Yeah.
Which I just think is ridiculous, considering the last 2 races have been timed out because of delays in wet racing. This one I think needed that for sure, because you couldn't see anything on that first lap when we had 3 separate incidences on the track.
I mean, even in the formation lap, the spray coming off of the cars was pretty insane. And by the time that they ended up red flagging it after that first lap, the pools of water on the track, how are you expecting anyone, regardless of what tire they're on, to keep any kind of contact, right?
Well, it's a little frustrating too, because being as a Ferrari fan, because I think there is justification to the FIA. It's why are we going out? Why are they sending the drivers out when they know this weather is bad? Because, within the first lap 2, we saw Carlos Sainz lost control into the hairpin and, crashed. And then that's when it got red flagged. And it's now Ferrari is starting the startup with one less driver. And I'm pretty sure, Perez passed him at this point. So Leclerc had a fight throughout the whole race. I don't know. It just it kind of sucked. It's just I question a lot of the decisions, and we'll get into the Pierre Gasly and the tractor on the racetrack, which is utterly stupid.
That pissed that fucking pissed me off watching that, because considering what happened 8 years ago on a track where there was an incident, similar to a very rainy day, and a fellow race driver passed away because of there was a tractor on the circuit while they were still driving under the safety car to clear, to clear the debris and clear the car that was crashed. To do it though, but to have it under green flag, and then the red flag goes immediately after he passes him. But the fact that, I don't know if you've seen the video of him, because there was a marshal on the course too. The marshal pulled away Sainz's car, and as that was happening, Gasly screams past him because A, he can't see due to the spray and the rain, but also B, because the green flag was out. What are we doing sending a tractor when it's a green flag? If you're gonna red flag the damn session, then let them all go back into the pits and then figure it out.
It kind of reminded me, just to start to interrupt, I know Erica, you were about to say something, but wasn't it in Italy this year at Monza, there was a situation where the tractor was on the track. I think they were removing Daniel Ricciardo's car. No, they weren't removing Daniel Ricciardo's car, but there was a situation where like they could have easily red flagged the session and taken the car completely off, but then they had to end the race under a safety car. Like, what is the difference? I question what is the rationale by the FIA. And we all were making fun of Massey last year, but like, at least when he was around, there was some understandable scenarios for the most part.
I think because of the fact that it was so, you could not see a thing out there. Like at Monza, it was, a nice sunny day, clear as, clear visibility. But, in Suzuka, when Gasly, you literally could not see the tractor. Tractor had barely any light on to dictate that was there. But also the fact too that, like, what bothers me when I'm coming back to is that the flag was green,
Mm-hmm.
not yellow, not red. It was green.
Yeah, like the second that Sainz had that accident, immediately, especially where it was on the track, should have been, in my mind, and given the weather conditions, yellow flagged immediately. So everyone's at least reducing speed from the get-go. And then once they understood the severity of it, like just red flag it right away. And it's also so clear. Think about how many other incidences there were on that first lap. Vettel spun out. We had, I think, Zhou spun out. What was it? One of the
Albon's
also
engine cut out.
like so much went down. It's clear, like, as much as there are some things that happen and they're just racing incidences, there's more to it than that at that point. And maybe you need to reevaluate whether you're under that green flag situation. But like immediately with all of that and the debris on the track from everyone, yellow flag the session at the very least right from the get-go. And like, especially for it to be the same track with the tractor out where Jules had his accident, and a lot of drivers had taken the time to post and kind of honor him because it was 8 years after the accident. Like, I don't understand how you're still having these issues all this time later. If anything, you think you'd be so overly cautious as to make sure that that doesn't happen a second time, that you take a little more action.
Yeah, and I even think that his dad even made a comment online, like, his father wrote on Instagram that the race officials had no respect for either the life of the drivers or his son that ended up passing away. They said they're going to make an investigation, so hopefully, like, something comes up. But like, there's got to be I think there's a reoccurring theme that even though from the 2021 season, there is still a lot of question marks in making some of these decisions of deploying the safety car or even red flagging the session or yellow flagging or the virtual safety car. Personally, I don't understand the whole purpose of a virtual safety car. You either have the car or not. But this is like another example of like what is going on this season. And like, look, like, it's like you had Carlos Sainz, you had Albon, and like the team is depleted after 2 laps. It's like, okay, especially in a championship season where Ferrari is hoping to try to close the gap on the constructors because there was a potential, but I don't know. I'm a little furious. I was not happy with Sunday's race, and maybe I am sour because we lost, like it's an official loss, but it's not fair.
No. I don't think a lot of that race went down how people would have liked to see it. And for a track that really could have produced a very interesting race and something that would have been fun to follow, for things to go down how they did, and for there to be so much kind of wavering even afterward about whether or not it was going to be full or half points, kind of what was happening is just kind of sad to see. Like it just seemed very underwhelming, especially for a race that could have been entertaining and really ended up giving us one of our first kind of final results of the season, right?
Well, I guess in Suzuka's fairness, it did produce like one hell of a sprint race.
That's true. Yeah.
Because the 40 minutes that they raced was some great wheel-to-wheel action. Especially when Vettel and Latifi pitted early for Inters right out of the get-go, jumped up on everybody and was able to finish in the points. Congrats to Nicholas Latifi for finishing P9. Yeah, here we go. 2 points. Now he's not sitting in 21st in the 20-man race.
You mean the standings?
He's sitting in 20, which is great to see. But it produced some amazing moments. Like the battle between Checo and Leclerc, it was great. I thought, that was some good hard nosed racing, and then Leclerc did gain an advantage at the end. Got slapped at the 5-second penalty and ended up losing the title based on that. And I know Ricci, you're upset about that, but I think it was the right call, because I think Checo had the opportunity to kind of beat him around the corner, and have a drag race to the final, similar to what Alonso and Vettel had, which was pretty cool to watch.
And so I even read online, because I'm not gonna lie, it was hard for me to watch the race when I was in New York. Sportsnet wouldn't work for me, because as you're in it's a Canadian channel, so you can't watch in the States. But people were saying that they were not watching that battle between Vettel and Alonso, that literally had to go down to a photo finish.
Yeah, there was no cover on it. There's no coverage on it.
Which is just wild to me, because if you like, I've seen clips of what people recorded at the track. That was nuts. Them coming down the straight and everything. I mean, oh my goodness.
That was probably the best finish of a race we've seen all season.
Yeah.
I think another thing that stood out to me is, we talk about a lot of the fans, the Japanese fans particularly, they go all out.
They're awesome, aren't they? And
yeah,
they're so respectful too of the track.
Yeah.
The helmets, the not only the mask, but like with the front wings on it too. I thought that was hilarious.
I also loved, what was it? I guess the guy would have put this together before Alpine made their announcement, but he had a pair of sunglasses that were attached to kind of the breaking news from the F1 Instagram page and social media channels, to be like, breaking news, Alpine signs F1 fan to be new driver for 2023. And then it like framed his face if he if he had this on his head or on his face. And I was like, wow. Like, I saw some cool, didn't see anything anywhere near as cool as this in Montreal. And I was still very impressed with the getup some people had. There was a guy near us who had a rear wing as part of his hat. But I mean, the fans just took it to another level. But like we said, it was fun to see that, but they were still very respectful and polite, which we haven't necessarily seen elsewhere when people get that into it, right?
Especially with the weather conditions. Like, a lot of people can be very miserable and depressed, but the fans there just they kept trucking. Yeah,
made my cold, dead heart a little warmer that day.
I guess it also a couple of things to note that, with Max securing the championship, I guess what will be his rationale going for the next couple of races? Like, what do you think is going to be in the mind of Max Verstappen going into Austin? Obviously, this is kind of going to be like similar to what I guess like Vettel did. Like, obviously, you're going to be still racing, but like, do you feel like you need to relax? Do you keep going, or is it just going to be a party for the next 4 races? Like, doesn't even matter. Like, they also still need to secure the constructors, but I think they're in a very good position to secure it.
Yeah, so until that's in the bag, just knowing Max and the type of guy he is, he's definitely going to keep pushing to try to increase that margin as much as possible. But I think we've seen time and again with him, even when he was younger and less experienced and not someone who is necessarily expecting to podium win, get a world driving championship, he's just got the drive, right? Like, these guys are pro athletes. I don't think they really know the meaning of quit for the most part, right? And he's just a very fierce competitor who's going to keep pushing right through to the end, in my opinion.
Well, he also has an opportunity to break some pretty good records for a single season, in my opinion. Especially, so most wins in a season right now is shared between Vettel and Schumacher at 13.
Wow.
And Max is sitting at 12. So he could in theory obliterate the record and set the new standard. In the cars. If he wins the last 4 races of the season, that would be 16 wins of a possible 22 races.
Wow.
It's absolutely wild.
And
that's crazy. He's going to go for that. He's going to do it.
And that would tie Schumacher, and that would push Schumacher down into 3rd for the highest percentage of wins in a season. Ascari in 52 has a 75%, where he won 6 and 8. But just to think, like, Max could be setting some records here in F1 in a season where the regulations were meant to bring fighting closer together.
Well, it certainly brought fighting closer in the midfield.
Right, but like in a way we've been pitched that it was kind of going to be all around, right? But just to think that he's been able to kind of destroy his competition
Yeah.
with these new regulations is just incredible.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. It's so funny. Like last year, we were all complaining because, yeah, it was Lewis and Max fighting for the championship, but we were like, it's always Lewis and Max, it's always Mercedes and Red Bull. At least there was some kind of competition, and we didn't know who was going to win until it was much more down to the wire. Am I right? Like Red Bull just, and Ricci looks like he's going to have an aneurysm as I say this, but we were really hoping that Ferrari would be the new contender this year, but Red Bull just ran away with it.
I'm not going to quote the person, but this person told me, they said to me saying, oh, is Ferrari just always 2 and 3rd? I feel like they never win. I was like, thanks.
That's such a slap in the face. I love it.
Oh,
It's okay. Yeah. So I guess I'll be curious to see, and like I think those particular records are going to be targeted for Verstappen. I think if I was in Ferrari's situation, I think now the writing's on the wall that they're not going to win the championship this year. So I think the focus for Leclerc, and I think for Leclerc in particular, is let's try to at least secure second in the Drivers' Championship. Let's try to beat Checo. We've shown that we've been able to compete with him this year. So I think that's probably the focus for him. And then I think for Carlos is still to have like a reasonable top 5 finish, but try to secure P2 in the constructors. Just I don't think Mercedes is anywhere close to catching that, but I think just like, let's just try to go out with a couple more podiums and maybe 1 or 2 wins. I think that would be nice, just to kind of end the season off at just try to end the season off on a high note, I think is the best play for Red Bull strategy. And I think, not even talking about the midfield, but it's a crapshoot. So it can go either way, whether if it's Alpine, if it's McLaren, even in the lower tier, if it's Aston Martin, if it's Haas or AlphaTauri. I think there's still a lot to play for in the last 4 races, particularly for a lot of teams, even though that Red Bull's already clinched the Drivers' Championship and most likely constructors within the next 2 races.
I think there's also an opportunity. Oh, maybe not.
What is that?
Red Bull have what? Red Bull have 13 wins this year.
That's a good question.
14 wins, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So the record for most wins in a season by constructors, Mercedes, and by 19 in the year that Rosberg and Hamilton duked it out in 2016 for Rosberg's first world championship. But it would have been like they could set a record. They could finish second with most wins in a season if they do win the remaining 4 as well.
Yeah, we have a lot to see for these last 4 races, and I think there'll be a treat.
There's battles everywhere. That's the cool part about like Formula One now, is that it's going to be like, can Mercedes come back and take Ferrari over for number P2 in the championship? In the constructors, who's going to win between Alpine and McLaren? Because Alpine got the better edge this weekend against McLaren in Suzuka, right? Bringing their lead back up to 13 points after getting it decimated in Singapore. And then the battle for 6th place now, since that Aston Martin's kind of made a resurgence. We're having 3-point finishes, or I guess a double point finish and then a single point finish last week. So they kind of come back up in that constructors championship.
We also forgot to mention that AlphaTauri is now tied with Haas on points. I'm curious to see, because Haas has not scored any points since Austria. And we talked about how they had such a decent start to the start of the year, and now we're kind of seeing that domino effect. I don't even know if they're going to be able to hold on to 8th in the constructors, which would be a win in itself for them, or even 7th would have been like an ideal position. But yeah, so I don't know how this is going to go proceed in the next couple of races.
Man, that sucks for Haas. Like, what a strong start to the season to just absolutely been it in the back half. I am a little shocked for AlphaTauri, though. I know this has not been the best season for them, but we've touched on it a couple of times. They were a strong midfield contender last year. So I'm disappointed to see them do as they've done. But who knows, maybe with some fresh blood and some rejigging of things next year, we'll see something a little bit more exciting, right?
Speaking about new blood, I guess who's moving on over there?
Well, lots of exciting news that came out of the paddock this week. So first and foremost, I think we'll touch on Alpine because we've been wondering who's going to take that seat that was vacated by Alonso for quite some time now. And Pierre Gasly will be moving over to the team next season to join his fellow Frenchman Esteban Ocon with the French constructor, which if you haven't seen the memes already, they're basically gonna build a car out of baguettes and their fuel will be some very nice camembert or something of the sort. Maybe they'll produce some ethanol out of some champagne. Who knows? But with that then left a bit of a hole at AlphaTauri. And after a stunning performance with Williams the other week, Nick DeVries will be occupying that seat in the 2023 season. So he's finally joining that F1 grid after we've seen him step in a few different times. He's got another trial account that has been created, and it seems like he actually put his credit card info in for this one. So he'll be sticking around for the season next year.
I was
in
just
that
thinking,
AT gear.
But
I
that's
was
a
just
big L for Williams in a way, right? For not
Yeah.
securing
Yeah.
DeVries. That's a
But at the same
big
time,
L.
I think if you're DeVries, even if Williams did approach him, I don't think they'd be able to match what AlphaTauri would offer him. Not just in terms of development or performance, but I think AlphaTauri, even though they're like a B team to Red Bull, still have more money and resources behind them than William does, right? So
I heard the food budget at AlphaTauri is quite incredible too.
we're gonna get into that, but I'll just make some comments here. It's interesting because when we talk about Nick DeVries, like I think he's worn 4 shirts this year. He was
Yes.
Mercedes reserves, then he was at Aston Martin at one point, I think. And then he came into Williams, and then who's the third team he was wearing a shirt for?
Well,
that's technically
you just listed
AlphaTauri.
3 teams.
Yeah,
And
then you
then
can
the
count AlphaTauri
fourth
for
team
next
would
season.
now be
Ah.
AlphaTauri with the announcement. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
man's on a mission.
He's on a mission. I think he's trying to go for the Infinity Gauntlet of F1 teams.
Well,
Who
then
knows? Maybe become the most powerful of them all in time.
so now we only have like 2 spots where 2 teams that have unconfirmed drivers lineups now. That would make Haas and Williams. Haas is looking at re-signing Mick. They've had talks in Singapore, and Williams is looking at either Logan Sargent or Jack Doohan, I believe, which, and he confirms it unofficially, leaves Danny Rick without a seat next season in Formula One.
It makes me sad. He had a good show at Singapore too, if memory serves, unless I'm mixing that up with another
Yeah,
race.
P16 to P5.
Yeah, like that's pretty awesome to see. And again, like he hasn't pulled the performance out of this car that I think we all hoped, but especially as F1 turns their attention to the more North American sort of Western market, he's been huge for that marketability. He's got such a likable personality. Like half of the American fans got sold on the sport through Drive to Survive. That whole first season was really centered around him, and that's what got people bought in. So to have him not on the grid, I think will be a huge L for F1. Like I understand from a performance standpoint, but just it's sad.
But like to think, right? I know he's in a weird spot of his career, but to think like he's a much better driver than Mick, Logan, or Jack in that case. And to have 2 seats open, and I know they're inferior teams compared to McLaren at the end of the day, but who's to really not think you could do something special win a Williams next season, right? Like him and Albon. Like it'd be cool.
Yeah.
It would be a unique challenge, I think, to kind of maximize the car and be a new challenge for Danny Rick not being in a, midfield and above team.
Well, and that's like Bottas has said, going from Mercedes to Alfa Romeo, he's enjoying it so much more this year. Like he's getting back to what he loves about racing. And who's to say that that wouldn't be the same thing for Ricardo, right? Like you go to a team like that, I think he could just have fun, like lend his experience to a greener team like Haas, be kind of another figure to help coach along someone like Albon, because Albon, I think, joined Red Bull after Danny Rick left, right? Or was he with Toro Rosso at the time? I'm not sure. Either way, I think it could be a good pairing for the two of them. Um, it would be, yeah, like a missed opportunity, especially when you compare who some of these teams are looking at, occupying the seats with. But just think about how fun it would be to have Danny Rick and Valtteri Bottas kind of duking it out in those cars at the back. I think they'd have a swell time, and I think it would be a lot of fun to watch too.
And I think what the thing that has been hampering Danny is like this level of expectation that he hasn't been able to perform to. And by going to these new teams, there really is going to be no level of expectation. And I think that might just open it up to have, exactly as you mentioned, Erica, have more fun, enjoy racing again.
And that's it too. Like, I think part of it is that when the drivers enjoy themselves, I think they're going to put it out there. Like, Max is having a time in that car. Lewis was not doing so hot in the Mercedes, but he hated driving it earlier in the season. He's enjoying it a lot more now. And, we've seen it time and again. Like, even Kimi Räikkönen, once that F1 pressure was off, he was like, well, may as well do NASCAR now. Let's get back to the fun part of driving. So yeah, I think there's a good pairing there. Haas is an American team with the support that he's got, like Danny Rick has in the States too. I feel like that's just like explosive. That would just be phenomenal.
And you got to keep in mind that, Ricardo's always talked about how he has a love for the United States. Like he's apparently in LA all the time. I even think the Drive to Survive series like followed him out there. Yeah, I'm interested. That's like
American, isn't she?
Say that again.
I thought he was seeing someone who's American. Like
What a twist.
I don't know. I feel like I saw some when they were on the summer break, he was in the States and was doing like a lot of hiking out west.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there was a whole bunch of people there, and there was some girl that he seemed particularly chummy with. I don't know if they're an item or maybe they're just good friends. I thought maybe she had posted something. I can't recall. I'd have to do a deep dive again. But like, I don't know. I think he's got a strong foothold, and I feel like he, even when he's not an F1 anymore, he's got his sights set on the States. He's developing a series based on F1 for one of the TV networks, like a satire mockumentary types deal, I think. So I don't know. He's in it for the long haul.
So I think to our fans, I think it's because I don't know, we didn't get any fan questions today, but we did get some comments from Tyler and Graydon about their thoughts of this race. When I talked to Tyler, all I heard is super max, super max. The whole time, and Graydon just said Bottas. But what's your thoughts? I guess a question to our fans is, where do you think Daniel Ricciardo should go in his next career move? Should he be an F1 reserve driver? Should he go to Indy? Should he go to NASCAR? Or should he just move out to LA or Montana like he did during the summer break? Sorry, Andrew, I think I saw your hand there. What was your final comments on this?
I was just saying there was an interesting, my last comment about this whole Danny Rick situation is that there was an interesting video we posted today, and it was an interview with Toto Wolff regarding Valtteri Bottas and not re-signing him next year. But what Toto did was that he made sure that Valtteri was in a team that he really wanted to go to prior to letting George know that he was going to be racing in a car, because I don't think if Valtteri found that team, they weren't going to allow George to race. With Mercedes next season, we're going to keep Valtteri for another year, but just it goes to show that, as a team principal, Toto made sure that his second driver was set beyond his Mercedes career before bringing in the new blood. And I kind of wish a man named Zach Brown did the exact same thing.
That I think that we covered a lot there. Oh wait, that's not it.
Nope.
We got hold my beer, because what did the FIA come out with the other day? Who wants to talk about it? Who wants to lead us off? And sure, we can quote Wolf of Wall Street if we want, but
Morning, the business expenses. Relax.
Business expenses?
Yes.
Jordy, look what you got here.
What?
Look at this. $26,000 for
I feel like
actually,
Andrew's got the numbers in front of him right now. So
it was actually Andrew who broke the news in our little chat. So Andrew, Mr. Breaking News, Andrew, breaking news Cleary.
your
Let's hear it.
CPA.
So yeah. Red Bull and or Aston Martin need to hire one after this one. But the cap, so 2021, or with the whole new regulations, the cap has been introduced, or cost cap was set in F1. Just again, an opportunity. We've seen it in major North American sports where they introduce a hard cap, the NHL in particular, to kind of increase parity within the league, and to make teams all around more competitive, and to instead of having like this hierarchical system of the have and have nots, really. So they introduced this cap and set at $145 million, and there was going to be some serious reprimands if you were to break the cost cap regulations, as I believe ex Ferrari team principal and Ross Brawn mentioned that there would be severe penalties, including stripping of F1 titles if teams were to go above cost or to go outside of the compliance of being within the cost cap. So that's why they have a cost cap adjudication panel, which is made up of 6 judges installed by the FIA and teams, and they can determine on whether or not what are the penalties are. So the news came out last week regarding, or right after Suzuka regarding who was compliant and who was not. 8 teams fell under compliance, while 2 teams didn't. Aston Martin with a procedural breach of the cost cap, and then Red Bull Racing with the procedural breach and a overspend of approximately, I think, $1 to $2 million in the cap, which in hindsight isn't enough, but of course it has fans freaking out thinking, is Max gonna lose his title next season?
Just to add in also, Williams were found to have a breach as well, but then the team rectified it in a timely, cooperative, and transparent manner. So good on Yost.
So going to Red Bull, the reason why they're $1 to $2 million over apparently is that they overspent on their food budget, but also apparently gave sick pay for vacations for their employees, which I really appreciate. But the memery that came out of this was incredible. This
Top tier.
And how they can overspend by $1 to $2 million in food.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't imagine. I just keep looking at the one where Christian Horner is eating like a dessert, and Benanto's just looking at him, and he's like, "You actually serve food at your paddock?" Oh my god!
I also love the one. It was if you remember, there was the photo of all the team principals and some of the other execs out to dinner earlier in the season that went around, and it just zooms in on Horner's face because he looks a little pained in the photo, and it goes, "It was at this moment he realized he paid for the meal with his corporate credit card."
I love that they showed the meme of Ferrari showcasing that they have to share sandwiches while doing like their social media posts, and that Red Bull just go balls to the wall for all of like they're trying food in different places videos on YouTube.
So I also wonder too, because wasn't there like a video? I mean, obviously this was a little bit before the divorce of Yuki Tsunoda and Pierre Gasly. But there was one of them like having a spa day and eating a ton of food together, and I'm just like, you just know maybe some money got shuffled around and that was happening over there. But as like one thing I'm curious about, because obviously this was a pretty clear overspend from Red Bull, but just the one thing that I've seen come up, I haven't had a chance to look into it. They talk about this procedural thing with Aston Martin. What does that mean? Is it just like they kind of hid something that they should have been forthcoming with? Like, what is that procedural kind of gap that's missing from that team?
Yeah,
Like,
they
are
must
we
have
talking
not
about, like-
followed some. Yeah, go ahead, John. I was thinking.
Is it like, are we talking like a procedure breach?
That's what I was
Uh,
curious about, because it like had to do with the cost cap. So does it mean that there was some way they were supposed to account for or do something that they didn't, or what is that breach?
Well, I think procedural could be submission. So Williams got the reason why Williams were a procedural breach was that there was a late submission of files last year for certain documentation. And that was similar in terms of procedural breach, like Aston Martin's experienced the same one as Williams. While Red Bull had both a procedural and a minor overspend. So really, at the end of the day, the problem was, I think, with the new cost cap, they're obviously getting used to the procedure breach. I would have laughed if Aston Martin had an overspend breach because they sucked last year. And to think that if you were over the cap and you were that bad, that's like the definition of a loser right there.
I know. I can't even imagine what kind of conversations they would have been having if they were over cap and doing that poorly. I mean, I have to think you'd be in a similar situation to Haas with Mick, where he kept splitting cars in half earlier this season. Like, you just would have had people continuously demolishing these vehicles in order to hit that kind of cap, because it's like, clearly this ain't going into R&D. This ain't where we're spending the money if this is the kind of conversation we're having. But oh, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I'm hopeful. I mean, it would be really terrible if Max ends up being penalized in any sort of way. Fortunately, I mean, if they do, I'm hoping it's not like a crazy amount of reduction, because we do still have a few races left in the season. He still stands to elongate the lead he has over anyone else, so that if there were a penalty, he'd probably be able to compensate. But kind of a shame if it was something more at that corporate level that ends up affecting the driver in the standings, right?
So for a minor breach, which is 5% overspend, the penalties could include a public reprimand, which I don't know, is that like Game of Thrones style, where they throw tomatoes at you and yell shame in the streets?
She's a witch.
Right? Like, what's public reprimand at that point? A deduction of constructors or drivers championship points, which I think could make it really interesting if they did that this year, because we want to hear Christian Horner. Don't you want everyone to hear Christian Horner yell in the radio that Max Verstappen, you are the world champion?
I know. We do want to hear it.
The face on Ricci right now.
Well, I'm not a Mercedes fan, so it's like whatever. And I just thought about this, that Kimi Räikkönen is still our last Ferrari champion.
Oh no, really? That's
Yeah.
so long ago.
15 years.
Oh.
It could also include an exclusion from events. So maybe they can't pull a Kimi and get wasted at the drivers. What do they do at the end? Like the drivers' banquet at the end of the season.
Well, that would be sad. To be fair, though, like, it seems like Red Bull does a pretty good job of getting their drivers liquored up after a nice race. So, I don't know if that would be too much of a loss.
Did you see the video of all the drivers preparing for was it Singapore, mentally, during that small break? And apparently there's a video that surfaced of Max Verstappen and Lando Norris just party in the club.
Yeah, I believe the caption were, here is a photo of a man who knows he's so good, no matter what he does, he'll win, and a man who knows that he stands no chance of winning, no matter how good he does. So that was.
There's also it could be a limitation on aero testing for next season. That could be a big thing.
Ooh, that would have, well, isn't the amount of time they have for aero testing already kind of impacted based on where they finish in the grid in a given season?
True, but it could be further impacted for Red Bull if they get a further limitation penalty on them, or it could include a fine, which would mean less team dinners, unfortunately, for Red Bull drivers.
Oh man.
No. For Red Bull drivers.
But I'm curious to see what they would do. Would they do a combination of both, like a combination of one or two? Is do they get an appetizer with the deduction of points, and then slap the main?
No, I don't think they get dessert.
I think aero testing.
I think they get maybe one dessert a week from now on, and then they get no time in the wind tunnel. They don't deserve it.
One dessert a week, that sucks.
One dessert a week and maybe 10 minutes in the wind tunnel a week, at max. And I understand what was the rationale that came out this late? And then I think this was a delayed report too.
You go ahead, Lyrica. Sorry.
I know that we were kind of waiting on it for a while because with them saying that this year they were going to be much more strict about it and knowing that we're as far in the season as we are, I think a lot of people were waiting to see more updates on the spend progression because they had to imagine that with a lot of the work that's been done, people would be approaching that cost cap for the most part. So it'll be, I think, I mean, and then they announced they were going to release the report, and then we were waiting and waiting and waiting for this report to be released for quite a while. So,
Well, do you think that they waited until Max won the title in order to then release the report? Because the public outcry would have been severe if that came before before Max won World Drivers' Championship, and people would be calling for point deductions to kind of get through the race. But now that Max has kind of won the title, do you think they just want to maybe take a look at it from a future standpoint and try to affect Red Bull from future years?
I don't know though, because I think had they announced it before, like, yeah, there would have been the outcry, but I almost feel like announcing it after with all the speculation around what this will do potentially to point standings and stuff, almost kind of, and the confusion that already existed this weekend with, is it full points, is it half points, what are we doing based on how this race was completed. It's just kind of like further undermining the value of the win. So I think
Yeah.
if you're the FIA and you stand to have this kind of rainy weather Spa 2.0 race, but there's still a possibility for Max to win, like why would you do that? I feel like that's just kind of deflating your own like racing season as an overseeing organization, right? To just be like, hey, we have this guy, he's really good and he won, but also he did it under weird conditions, and then we might have to fine him and take some of his points away.
I almost wonder if Max will ever win a World Drivers' Championship that's not
Without
marred with
controversy?
controversy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Big announcement.
Yay!
So myself, Andrew, and Erica have secured a location to watch the US Grand Prix. Too bad the title's already decided, but that doesn't matter. You can come out for drinks, food. We're going to be out in Toronto at the Blackburn Social House on College Street. We'll make sure we put it make sure we put it in the comment section below, and we'll also be doing some promo later this week, because I believe this episode will be available for people on October 13th. So we're really excited. I think we already have a pretty decent amount of people. And if you have any questions, please reach out to us on our Instagram page at F1 Podcast. We also just want to say shout out to the Blackburn Social House. We're really excited to come watch the race. Myself and Erica are going to tour the spot tomorrow. Andrew, we will inform you of everything, as always. But yeah, we're quite excited. I think this is our second fan meetup, and I think this is our biggest one yet. So I don't know if you guys have any additional shout outs, but yeah, we're pretty excited for this.
If you like beer, if you like food, if you like watching F1, why wouldn't you want to come out to the
I don't know,
Blackburn
why
Social
wouldn't they
23rd?
want to come out, Andrew?
You can hang out with all three of us in one place again.
Plus, the NFL slate that weekend doesn't look fun anyways. So,
And also, what a fun time to see a whole bunch of other people in their F1 merch and be like, you're a Ferrari fan? How unfortunate for you.
You're a
And
McLaren
then
fan?
someone
Oh
can go,
gosh.
well, you're wearing a McLaren t-shirt. At least we stood a chance. And then that person will go, that's valid. And you'll laugh and you'll clink your steins and you will drink the pain away while watching Red Bull win yet another race.
like, would you rather watch an F1 race with us, the F1 podcast, or watch the Jets versus the Broncos at 4:00 on Sunday?
Yeah.
You
Ugh.
lose.
Yeah, come
Ugh.
out and enjoy a great time.
I mean, you can watch it on your phone, but who wants to do that?
Ugh,
You won't be able to get service in that bar. No, it was strictly US
Texans
Grand
versus
Prix.
the Raiders too. Oh, just
Ugh.
toilet bowl.
Anyways, but that's the big announcement. You'll see a lot of this on later this week, as we'll be promoting a little bit more. But yeah, we're really excited, super excited. It's been a fun episode. Congratulations again to Max Verstappen on winning his second World F1 Drivers Championship, second in a row, and I think this is the 8th driver to do this in a back-to-back champion. I think it is. but I'm not too sure on that stat. But as I just sign off today, Andrew, Erica, thank you for a great. Hold up, third driver. Total, my number was way off.
Third.
Well, who else is back to back? No, it's more than that.
It would be
No,
Hammer.
he's become. Hold up, he has become the third driver to have secured the championship with 4 or more races remaining. So there's a caveat.
Oh, okay.
There's a caveat there.
Gotcha. I was gonna say, I was like, I can list at least 4 people from memory that have also done this.
Yeah. Well, we should do. I think that's actually a good question. A good statement is us three. We should do a trivia and see who of the best F1 podcast the co-host wins. I mean, because I think I'm going to walk away with a fantasy. I know we haven't talked about that, but
Oh, dude, I have not paid attention to that in a long time. Oh no.
we should get a little trophy for Sunday. Anyways, okay. On that note, we'll take this offline. Okay, Andrew, send us off, please.
Everyone, thank you so much for listening to season 2, episode 21 of the F1 podcast. Make sure to take your participation for the F1 podcast hashtag to the max by following us at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, as well as Instagram at the F1.podcast, and following us on Ricci's YouTube page at xRicci. Again, thank you so much. And next race, we'll be all together watching at the Blackburn Social House on the 23rd, watching to see if Red Bull can win the Constructors' Championship in Austin, Texas. Quite the party that could be.
Yeah.
Thank you.